You want to know what it feels like to watch a man burn his entire life to the ground, thinking he's lighting a fire under you, only to realize he's been pouring gasoline on himself the whole time? You lying, cheating son of a bitch. The divorce papers never made it to the table. I backhanded them clean across that shabby attorney's office and they exploded against the wood-paneled wall like a flock of startled pigeons. Chet Dunwoody lurched backward in his chair, one hand flying up to shield his face like I was about to claw his eyes out. Smart instinct. I was considering it. Jean-Marie, you calm your crazy ass down right now. Calm? You want calm? I snatched my phone off the table and shoved the screen so close to his face he went cross-eyed trying to focus. Read it, you weasel. Read it out loud, or I swear to God I'll read it for you and I'll do it with a microphone at your dealership Monday morning. The text was from Travis Lee. His brother. His trusted, loyal, dumb-as-a-post brother who was supposed to be hiding $1.3 million and the deed to our lake house where no greedy ex-wife could ever find it. The text read, Junebug, all assets secured. Full balance transferred to your account as of 9:04 a.m. Password is our birth year. Chet still thinks I'm his. He's about to learn the hard way. I've always been yours. Love, your brother Jesse. Chet's mouth moved but no sound came out. His eyes, those beady little possum eyes I'd spent 11 years lying next to, scanned the words once, twice, 3 times. His brain was a dial-up modem in a 5G world, but the message was finally downloading. That ain't. Travis wouldn't. Oh, Travis absolutely would. And he did. And he's not Travis, you moron. I leaned across the table, planting both palms flat, and got close enough to smell the cheap whiskey he'd been drinking for courage. Travis Lee Dunwoody, your baby brother, your fall guy, the one person on this earth you thought was dumber than you, is actually Jesse Collier. My brother. My blood. My family. He's been mine for 2 years, and every single time you bragged about how you were gonna leave me penniless, he was on the phone with me that same night, laughing so hard he nearly ruptured his spleen. The attorney, a sweaty little man named Fletcher who Chet had hired because no reputable lawyer would take his case, scooted his chair backward until it hit the filing cabinet. He wanted no part of this. Smart man. Chet's face cycled through the 5 stages of grief in about 4 seconds. Denial. Anger. Bargaining. Depression. And then, bless his heart, the rage. He exploded out of his chair, knocking it over with a crash that rattled the cheap Venetian blinds. You set me up. You and that little. He grabbed the edge of the card table and flipped it sideways. Coffee cups shattered. Pens went flying. I didn't flinch. I just crossed my arms and watched the show. Set you up? I said, voice calm as Sunday morning. Honey, I didn't set you up. You walked into this trap with your eyes wide open and your fly unzipped, which is exactly how you walked into Tiffany with an IS trailer, if I recall correctly. I'll kill him. I'll kill both of you. No, you won't. I pulled a folded document from my purse and tossed it onto the overturned table. It landed face up. The new deed to Dunwoody's Deals on Wheels. Filed at the Smith County Courthouse at 8:15 that morning. Ownership, Jean-Marie Collier. You won't kill anyone because you don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. The business is mine. The lake house is mine. The $1.3 million is mine. Your truck? Repo man's picking it up at 4 o'clock. I canceled the loan this morning. Chet's entire body went rigid. His mouth opened and closed like a catfish on a dock. Behind him, Fletcher the attorney quietly packed his briefcase and slipped out the door without saying a word. Somewhere down the hallway, a secretary was on the phone with 911, and I could hear her whispering, "There's a domestic disturbance in room 204, please hurry." I didn't have much time. Good. I walked around the overturned table, stepping over the scattered paperwork, our marriage license, soaked in Folgers, and stopped 6 inches from my soon-to-be ex-husband's trembling face. Now here's how this is going to work, Chet. I kept my voice low, almost sweet. You're going to sign those papers. You're going to give me the divorce. You're not going to fight a single damn thing, because if you do, I will release the audio recordings I have of you detailing your plan to hide assets from the court. That's tax fraud, baby. That's federal prison. And you know who they don't treat kindly in federal prison? Men who wear that much hair gel. His fist clenched. For one beautiful, suspended moment, I thought he might actually swing at me. I hoped he would. I had two brothers now, one blood, one chosen, and both were waiting in the parking lot with baseball bats and plausible deniability. But Chet Dunwoody was a coward. He'd always been a coward. His fist unclenched. His shoulders slumped. He looked at the paper scattered on the floor, then at my face, then at the door Fletcher had escaped through. Sign, I said. Now. And then, because I am my mother's daughter and she didn't raise a fool, I reached into my purse and pulled out a pen. Pink. Glittery. I'd bought it at the Dollar Tree specifically for this moment. Use this, I said, pressing it into his trembling hand. I want to keep it afterward. As a souvenir. Behind me, the door burst open. Two Tyler PD officers filled the frame, hands on their belts, faces set to weekend shift exhaustion. Ma'am, we got a call about an altercation. I turned, smoothed my Goodwill dress, and gave them the warmest smile I could muster. Officers, thank you so much for coming. No altercation here. My husband was just about to sign our divorce papers, weren't you, sweetheart? I looked back at Chet. He was on his knees on the floor, surrounded by spilled coffee and shattered dignity, clutching a glitter pen like it was the last life preserver on the Titanic. The cops looked at him. Looked at me. Looked at each other. Sir, the older one said. You okay down there? Chet opened his mouth. Closed. And then, because the universe is just and also hilarious, a single tear rolled down his cheek and plopped onto our marriage license. Sign the papers, Chet, I said, pulling out my phone and hitting record. Or the next thing the police see is my footage of you threatening to kill me and my brother. Your choice, honey. The phone in my purse buzzed. A new text from Travis, no, from Jesse, my brother, my blood, my secret weapon. How's it going in there? You need me to come up? I brought the baseball bat just in case. Also, I'm spending his money on brunch later. You want mimosas or margaritas? I smiled down at the screen, then looked at my husband, crumpled and broken on the floor of a rental office in Tyler, Texas. Bottomless, I texted back. We're celebrating. Then I pointed at the papers with my free hand. Sign. Now. And Chet? He looked up, eyes red, face blotchy, a shell of the man who'd spent 11 years treating me like dirt under his boots. This was only Monday, I said. By Sunday, honey? By Sunday, your mama's wig is going viral, your church is going to disown you, and everyone in Smith County is going to know exactly what happens when you try to screw over Jean Marie Collier. Now, sign. And bless his heart, he did. The pink glitter pen scratched across the bottom of the divorce papers like a death rattle. Chet's signature, usually a big, looping, arrogant scrawl that took up half the page, was a shaky little scribble that looked like a third grader's handwriting. He didn't even read what he was signing. Didn't check the terms. Didn't notice the clause I'd had Fletcher the sweaty attorney insert 3 weeks ago when I'd secretly paid him a visit and made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Poor Fletcher. He'd been playing both sides, but he'd been playing for me the whole time. The officers watched in silence as Chet finished the last page and dropped the pen. It clattered on the linoleum floor and rolled under the radiator, never to be seen again. Fine by me. I'd gotten what I needed. You good, ma'am? The younger officer asked. He was maybe 25, with a crew cut and the earnest expression of a golden retriever who'd just graduated the academy. I'm wonderful, officer. I gathered up the signed papers, tapped them into a neat stack, and slid them into my purse. My husband just gave me the best gift he's ever given me in 11 years of marriage. His signature. On my freedom. Chet was still on the floor. He hadn't moved. He was staring at the wall like a man who'd just watched his house burn down and couldn't remember if he'd left the stove on. Sir? The older cop nudged Chet with the toe of his boot. Not hard. Just enough to check if he was still alive. You need medical attention? I need my money back, Chet whispered. What's that, sir? I need my money back. Chet scrambled to his feet, knocking over the last upright chair. His face had gone from blotchy red to a dangerous shade of purple. She stole it. She and my brother, my own brother, they conspired. That's illegal. That's theft. Arrest her. Arrest her right now. The officers exchanged a look. The older one, whose name tag read Officer D. Martinez, hooked his thumbs into his belt and turned to me with the weary patience of a man who'd worked domestic disturbance calls for 20 years. Ma'am, is there any truth to what he's saying? Did you take money that belongs to him? I opened my purse, pulled out a manila folder, and handed it to Officer Martinez. Everything's in there, officer. Bank statements. Transfer records. The original deed to the lake house. The new deed to the dealership. And, I pulled out a USB drive and held it up, audio recordings of Mr. Dunwoody detailing, in his own words, his plan to hide marital assets from the court to avoid equitable distribution. That's called fraudulent conveyance, and it's a felony in the great state of Texas. Officer Martinez took the folder and the USB drive. He didn't open the folder. He just looked at Chet, who was now hyperventilating, and then back at me. You got all this ready before the divorce signing? I've had it ready for 6 months, officer. When your husband tells you he's going to leave you destitute, you learn to document everything. My mama didn't raise a fool. Your mama raised a goddamn criminal. Chet shrieked. Sir, you need to calm down, Officer Martinez said. Right now. She's the one who came in here throwing papers. She's the one who threatened me. I want her arrested for assault. Did you strike your husband, ma'am? No, sir. I threw papers. Papers are not a deadly weapon, unless you're a tree. I paused. And I didn't threaten him. I told him I have recordings. That's not a threat. That's a promise of future legal action, which is my right as a citizen. Officer Martinez almost smiled. He caught himself, coughed into his fist, and turned back to Chet. Sir, it sounds like this is a civil matter. You need to take it up with the courts, not the police department. The courts? The courts? She's got the courts in her pocket. She's got my brother in her pocket. She's got, Chet's voice cracked and broke like a teenage boy's. She's got everything. I know, I said sweetly. Isn't it wonderful? The younger officer, whose name tag read T. Williams, cleared his throat. Ma'am, just for the record, how did you get your brother-in-law to turn over all those assets? That seems like a pretty big ask from a family member. I looked at Officer Williams. He was young. Earnest. Probably still believed in justice and fairness and all the things I'd stopped believing in around year 3 of my marriage. Travis Lee Dunwoody is not my brother-in-law, I said. He's my brother. My biological brother. Born Jesse Collier in Ardmore, Oklahoma, 34 years ago. He was taken from our mother during a custody battle that went sideways, adopted through a backdoor deal by the Dunwoody family, and raised by that woman. I jerked my thumb at the general direction of Tyler, Texas, where Mama Lou was probably at that very moment poisoning the church potluck with her famous 3-bean casserole, who never let him forget he wasn't really hers. 2 years ago, Jesse found me. Or I found him. Depends on who's telling the story. And when he told me what Chet was planning? I shrugged. Family takes care of family, officer. The Dunwoodies never learned that lesson. The Colliers were born knowing it. The room went quiet. Even Chet stopped his hyperventilating long enough to stare at me with something that looked almost like comprehension. 2 years, he said hoarsely. You've known for 2 years? 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days. But who's counting? You sat at my dinner table. You kissed me goodnight. You made me meatloaf. And the whole time, you were plotting with my brother to destroy me? I wasn't plotting to destroy you, Chet. I walked to the door, paused with my hand on the knob, and looked back over my shoulder. I was waiting for you to destroy yourself. I just handed you the matches. I pulled the door open and stepped into the hallway, where Fletcher the attorney was pressed against the wall like a man hiding from a tornado. He flinched when he saw me. Mrs. Dunwoody, Miss Collier, I didn't say anything, I swear. Relax, Fletcher. I patted his cheek. You did exactly what I paid you to do. The extra $5,000 will be in your account by end of business tomorrow. Buy your wife something nice. Tell her it's from the woman who's about to become the most successful used car dealer in East Texas. I left him sputtering against the wall and walked down the hallway, through the lobby, and out the front door into the blast furnace heat of a Texas afternoon. Travis, Jesse, was leaning against his pickup truck in the parking lot, arms crossed, a grin splitting his face from ear to ear. He was tall and lean, with the same hazel eyes as me, the same stubborn chin, the same crooked smile that our mother had passed down like a family heirloom. He was wearing a faded Pearl Jam t-shirt and jeans with paint stains on the knees, and he looked absolutely nothing like the Dunwoody family he'd been forced to grow up in. Well, he said. How'd it go? I held up the signed divorce papers. He whooped so loud that a flock of grackles exploded out of a nearby tree. Hot damn, Junebug. You actually did it. You actually got that son of a bitch to sign. I didn't get him to do anything. He signed because he's a coward and he knows I've got enough dirt on him to bury him 6 feet under. I walked around to the passenger side and climbed in. Now drive. I need a drink and you promised me brunch. Jesse swung into the driver's seat and cranked the engine. The truck rumbled to life, country music blasting from the speakers. He turned it down. Mimosas or margaritas? I told you. Bottomless. I leaned my head back against the seat and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 11 years. Bottomless everything. We ended up at a little Mexican place on the edge of town, the kind of hole-in-the-wall joint that served margaritas the size of fish bowls and didn't ask questions when you ordered your third one before noon. Jesse ordered us a plate of nachos the size of a hubcap and 2 frozen margaritas with extra salt, and we sat in a vinyl booth under a neon Corona sign and toasted to the end of my marriage. To Chet Dunwoody, Jesse said, raising his glass. May he spend the rest of his life wondering how 2 people he treated like dirt managed to outsmart him. To Chet Dunwoody, I agreed. May his next wife be even crazier than me. We clinked glasses and drank. The margarita was cold and tart and perfect. You know, Jesse said, scooping a mountain of guacamole onto a chip, I almost feel bad for him. Almost. Then I remember the time he told me I was a disappointment to the family name because I wanted to major in art instead of business. Or the time he told me I was a barren waste of a wedding ring after my miscarriage. Jesse's jaw tightened. Yeah. That. Almost feeling bad officially over. We ate in silence for a minute. The restaurant was filling up with the lunch crowd, construction workers, office ladies, a table of old men arguing about the Cowboys. Normal people living normal lives. I wondered what that felt like. You want to know the crazy thing? I said, spinning my glass in circles on the table. I loved him once. I really did. When we first got married, I thought he hung the moon. I thought I was the luckiest girl in Smith County. What changed? I thought about it. Nothing changed. That was the problem. I kept waiting for him to turn into the man I thought I married, and he never did. The man I thought I married didn't exist. He was a mask Chet wore until he didn't need to anymore. When did he stop wearing it? Our wedding night. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. His mama pulled me aside at the reception and told me I'd never be good enough for her son. I went to find Chet, to tell him what she said, and he was out back smoking a cigar with his buddies. I heard him say, "She'll do. She's pretty, she can cook, and she's too dumb to leave me." I should have walked out right then. Instead, I told myself I'd misheard him. I spent the next 11 years telling myself I was mishearing things. Jesse reached across the table and put his hand over mine. His fingers were stained with turquoise paint. "You're not mishearing anything now." "No. No, I'm not." I squeezed his hand, then pulled away and picked up my margarita. "Tell me about the dealership. Is everything in place?" Jesse's grin came back, brighter than the neon sign over our heads. "Oh, it's better than in place. I went by there this morning at 7. Changed the locks myself. The new signs being printed this afternoon, Jean Marie certified pre-loved vehicles. I wanted to go with Dunwoody's demise, but the sign guy said that was too long." "Did any of the employees see you?" "All of them saw me. I called a staff meeting in the parking lot. Told them the truth, or at least, the parts of the truth they needed to hear. Chet sold the business. New owner takes over tomorrow. Anyone who wants to keep their job can show up at 8 a.m. sharp and prove their loyalty." "How many are staying?" Jesse's grin widened. "All of them. Every single one. Turns out Chet was as terrible a boss as he was a husband." "Who knew?" "Every woman who ever worked for him, probably." I finished my margarita and signaled the waiter for another. "What about the lake house?" "Deeds in your name, filed and recorded. I drove out there yesterday and changed the locks on that too. Also threw away the mounted base Chet had over the fireplace. I hope that's okay." "The one he caught at Lake Fork in '09 and never shut up about?" "That's the one. I'm going to kiss you on the mouth." "Please don't. I'm gay and also your brother." "On the cheek, then." I leaned across the table and planted a kiss on his stubbled cheek. He smelled like turpentine and cheap deodorant and the cheap beer he'd been drinking, and he was the best person I'd ever known. "Okay," I said, settling back into my side of the booth. "What's next?" "We've got the money, we've got the business, we've got the lake house." "What about Mama Lou?" Jesse's expression shifted. The humor drained out of it, replaced by something harder. "What about her?" "She's going to find out. If she hasn't already. Chet's probably on the phone with her right now, crying into her polyester bosom. Let her find out." Jesse stabbed a nacho with unnecessary force. "I've spent 34 years listening to that woman tell me I was a burden. That I should be grateful she took me in. That my lifestyle was an abomination and I was lucky she didn't disown me." He looked up, and his hazel eyes, our hazel eyes, were blazing. "She's not my mother, June. She never was. She's just the woman who raised me because she couldn't have another kid of her own and didn't want the neighbors to talk. Everything she ever gave me, she gave with strings attached." "So you're ready for her to know?" "Really know? Not just about the money, but about us? About who you really are?" Jesse was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his margarita, drained the last of it, and set the glass down with a decisive thunk. "I've been ready my whole life," he said. "I just didn't have anyone standing next to me before. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't say anything. I just reached across the table, took his hand again, and held it. We stayed like that until the waiter brought my second margarita and asked if we wanted dessert. Jesse ordered sopapillas with extra honey, because he was my brother and we both handled our emotions with fried dough. "So," he said, once the sopapillas arrived and he drenched his in enough honey to kill a diabetic, "what's the plan for the rest of the week? You told Chet his mama's wig was going viral by Sunday. That's a pretty specific threat." "It's not a threat. It's a promise." I dipped a sopapilla in honey and took a bite. It was warm and crispy and perfect. Mama Lou Dunwoody has been the queen bee of First Baptist Tyler for 40 years. She runs the prayer circle, the potluck committee, and the gossip mill. She's destroyed marriages, ruined reputations, and driven 3 pastors to early retirement. Everyone's afraid of her because she knows where all the bodies are buried. And you're not afraid of her? I spent 11 years being afraid of her. I'm done. I licked honey off my fingers. No, here's the thing about Mama Lou. She's spent so long being the most powerful woman in town that she's forgotten what it feels like to be challenged. She thinks she's untouchable. And you know what happens to people who think they're untouchable? They get touched. They get touched real hard. In public. With witnesses. I leaned forward. You remember the church potluck this Sunday? The one Mama Lou's been organizing for 6 months? Jesse's eyes widened. The Founders' Day picnic? The biggest church event of the year? The one the mayor's going to? That's the one. June. Junebug. What are you planning? I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who'd spent 11 years being called a barren waste of a wedding ring, who'd been forced to move furniture while pregnant because her mother-in-law wanted to see her suffer, who'd sat silently through 1,000 Sunday dinners while her husband and his mama tore her down one passive-aggressive comment at a time. I'm planning to donate a very generous gift to the church, I said. In the name of the Collier Family Foundation. Half of every dollar Chet tried to hide from me is going to the women's shelter, just like you said in your speech. Wait, I haven't made that speech yet. That was, Jesse stopped. You're quoting something I haven't said yet. How are you quoting something I haven't said yet? Because I know you, Jesse. I know exactly what you're going to say when the moment comes. You're going to be magnificent. I reached across the table and stole one of his sapapillas. And then, after the donation is announced, I'm going to stand up and ask the congregation one simple question. What question? I bit into the stolen sapapilla. I'm going to ask Mama Lou, in front of God and everybody, to explain why the Dunwoody family's charitable foundation, which she's been soliciting donations for since 1995, doesn't actually exist. And I'm going to have the IRS paperwork to prove it. Jesse's mouth fell open. A dribble of honey rolled down his chin. She's been stealing from the church? For 30 years. Not huge amounts. Just enough to keep herself in wigs and bridge club fees. But it adds up. And when the IRS finds out, which they will, because I mailed them a very detailed anonymous tip this morning, she's going to have a lot more to worry about than whose casserole won the blue ribbon. June. Jesse set down his fork. His expression was somewhere between awe and terror. This isn't revenge. This is nuclear war. No, baby brother. Revenge was getting the money. Revenge was taking the dealership. This? I finished my second margarita and stood up, pulling my wallet out of my purse. This is closure. Now come on. We've got a dealership to rebrand and a lake house to redecorate. And I want to be home before dark. There's a mounted base I need to personally throw in the trash. We paid the bill, with Chet's money, which made the margaritas taste even sweeter, and headed back to the truck. As Jesse pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. You think you've won, you gold-digging whore? My lawyer will have every penny back by Friday. Enjoy your little victory while it lasts. I didn't respond. I just forwarded the text to my lawyer, a brilliant shark of a woman named Patricia Okonkwo who'd been waiting for a case like this her entire career, and typed, another one for the file. Also, he just called me a whore in writing. Is that useful? Patricia's response came back in under 30 seconds, extremely. Keep them coming. Also, congratulations on the dealership. I need a new car. I laughed out loud. What's funny? Jesse asked, glancing over at me. Chet just texted me. He's threatening to sue. Oh no. How terrifying. Should we pull over and panic? Absolutely. Right after we redecorate the lake house. I'm thinking we replace his mounted base with a portrait of our mother. Something big. Something beautiful. Something that'll make Mama Lou wet her polyester pantsuit when she sees it. Jessie grinned and hit the gas, and we barreled down the highway toward the lake house, toward the dealership, toward whatever came next. Behind us, in a shabby attorney's office downtown, Chet Dunwoody was probably still on the floor, surrounded by spilled coffee and shattered pride, trying to figure out how his perfect plan had gone so perfectly wrong. He'd figure it out eventually. They always did. But by the time he did, it would be Sunday, and Mama Lou's wig would be flying through a Piggly Wiggly parking lot, and everyone in Smith County would know exactly what happened when you tried to screw over Jean Marie Collier. And that, as my mama used to say before she was taken from me, was just the beginning of the story. The rest of it? The rest of it was even better. Chet Dunwoody spent Monday night in the Smith County holding cell, sleeping off a combination of cheap whiskey and blind rage on a metal bench that smelled like urine and regret. I know this because Officer Martinez called me at 11 p.m. to let me know. Just so you're aware, ma'am, he said, his voice crackling through the phone, your ex-husband got himself arrested about an hour after you left. Tried to kick in the door of his brother's art gallery. Problem was, his brother wasn't there, and the building belongs to a nice lady named Margaret who runs a quilting shop next door. She called 911. Your ex is now facing charges for public intoxication and criminal mischief. I was sitting on the deck of the lake house, wrapped in a quilt, watching the moon reflect off Cedar Creek. Jessie was inside, hanging our mother's portrait over the fireplace where the mounted base used to be. I could hear him humming a Willie Nelson song through the open window. What a shame, I said. I hope Margaret's door is okay. It's fine. Just a few scuff marks. But your ex-husband's pride? That's gonna need reconstructive surgery. Officer Martinez paused. Off the record, ma'am, I've been dealing with Chet Dunwoody's bullshit for 15 years. Speeding tickets he blamed on his wife. Noise complaints he blamed on his neighbors. One time he called us because a customer at the dealership looked at him funny. So whatever you did to him today, my whole department sends their regards. Thank you, Officer Martinez. That means more than you know. I hung up and sat there for a long time, watching the water. 11 years. 11 years of swallowing my pride, of smiling through Sunday dinners, of pretending I didn't see the receipts from motels I'd never visited. 11 years of Mama Lou picking at me like a vulture on roadkill, and Chet standing by, holding the ketchup. And now he was in a holding cell, and I was on my deck, and the mounted base was in the dumpster. Life was strange. Life was beautiful. Jessie came out with 2 bottles of Shiner Bock and handed me one. He'd changed into paint-splattered sweatpants and an old t-shirt that said "Art Saves Lives." His hands were still flecked with turquoise from whatever he'd been working on at the gallery. Mom's portrait looks good, he said, settling into the Adirondack chair next to me. She's watching over the living room now. I put her right where the base used to be. Felt symbolic. Everything about today is symbolic. I clinked my bottle against his. Chet's in jail. What? Officer Martinez called. Chet tried to break into your gallery and kicked some old lady's door instead. Jessie stared at me for a beat, then burst out laughing so hard he nearly choked on his beer. Oh my God. Oh my God. That idiot. That beautiful, predictable idiot. He went to the gallery to confront me and couldn't even find the right door. Margaret from the quilting shop is pressing charges. Margaret. Jessie wheezed. Margaret is 82 years old. She once chased a teenager out of her store with a yardstick. I can't believe Chet picked a fight with Margaret's door. We laughed until our stomachs hurt, 2 orphans sitting on a deck that now belonged to us, drinking beer that we'd paid for with Chet's money, watching the moon rise over a lake that had Chet's name on the deed until about 9 o'clock that morning. Okay, Jessie said, finally catching his breath. Okay. So Chet's in jail. What about tomorrow? What's the plan? Tomorrow, you and I are going to pay a visit to Dunwoody's Deals on Wheels. I want to be there when the employees show up. I want to look every single one of them in the eye and tell them what's changed and what hasn't. And what has changed? I took a long pull of my beer. Everything. The name. The ownership. The culture. The way women are spoken to. The way employees are treated. The whole damn philosophy of the place. I turned to him. You know, Chet used to call his female customers sweet cheeks during negotiations? He'd pat them on the shoulder and tell them not to worry their pretty little heads about the financing terms. I watched him do it for years. I wanted to vomit every time. So what's the new philosophy? The new philosophy is that June Marie Certified Pre-Loved Vehicles is going to be the first used car dealership in East Texas where women actually want to shop. No condescension. No sweet cheeks. No mysterious mechanical problems that show up 3 days after the warranty expires. We're going to be honest, transparent, and successful. And we're going to run Chet's old dealership into the ground by being better at his job than he ever was. Jesse raised his beer. To being better at his job than he ever was. To being better at everything than he ever was. We drank. The moon shimmered on the water. Somewhere in the distance, a fish jumped, and the splash echoed across the lake like a tiny round of applause. Tuesday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., pulled on my best power outfit, a navy blue blazer I'd found at Goodwill for $12, a cream-colored blouse, and the one pair of heels I owned that didn't pinch my toes, and drove to the dealership with Jesse riding shotgun. We stopped at the donut hole on the way and bought 6 dozen donuts. Glazed, chocolate-frosted, jelly-filled, the works. If you're going to win over a room full of nervous employees, you bring carbs. The dealership was a sprawling lot on the south side of Tyler, surrounded by a chain-link fence and crowned by Chet's pride and joy, a 30-foot-tall inflatable gorilla that had been the dealership's mascot for as long as anyone could remember. The gorilla's name was Dealin' Danny, and Chet had loved that thing more than he'd ever loved me. He'd had it custom-made in Houston. He'd written a jingle about it for the local radio station. He'd once dressed it in a Santa hat for Christmas and called the local news. Jesse parked the truck by the front gate. A cluster of employees was already gathered outside, clutching coffee cups and looking nervous. I recognized most of them: Bobby Ray, the head mechanic, a grizzled old guy with grease permanently embedded under his fingernails. Lupe, the office manager, who'd been running the dealership's paperwork for 20 years and had probably forgotten more about car sales than Chet ever knew. Darnell, the youngest salesman, a kid with a good heart and a terrible haircut who'd once slipped me a note that said, "You deserve better," after Chet had screamed at me in front of the whole staff. And there, standing at the back of the group with her arms crossed and her lips pursed, was Tiffany with an eye, Chet's side piece. The church choir soprano. The reason our marriage had finally imploded. She was wearing a hot pink tank top and jeans that looked painted on, and her bleach blonde hair was piled into a messy bun. She looked nervous. She should be. "Morning, everyone," I said, stepping out of the truck with the donut boxes balanced in my arms. "I brought breakfast. Let's go inside and have a chat." Bobby Ray squinted at me. "Mrs. Dunwoody? What's going on?" "Chet didn't show up this morning, and none of us have keys. The locks are different." "That's because the locks were changed yesterday." I pulled a shiny new key out of my blazer pocket, walked to the front door, and unlocked it. "Please, come in. Everything will be explained." They filed in after me, confused and murmuring. The showroom was exactly as I remembered it, slightly grimy, smelling of old coffee and tire rubber, with motivational posters on the walls that said things like "hustle and grind" and "if you ain't first, you're last." Chet had bought those posters at a mall kiosk in 2006 and never once followed their advice. I set the donuts on the reception desk and turned to face the employees. Jesse stood beside me, a quiet, steady presence. "My name is June Marie Collier," I said. "Some of you know me as June Marie Dunwoody. As of yesterday afternoon, I'm no longer a Dunwoody. My divorce from Chet is final, and as part of the settlement, ownership of this dealership has been transferred to me." The room went dead silent. Bobby Ray's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Darnell's eyes went wide. Lupe, bless her, didn't even blink. She'd probably seen this coming before I did. Tiffany with and I took a step backward toward the door. "Wait. Chet doesn't own the dealership anymore?" "No, Tiffany, he doesn't." "I do. And before anyone panics about their jobs, let me make something clear." I looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes. "If you want to stay, you can stay. Bobby Ray, I need a head mechanic I can trust. Lupe, you've been running this office since before Chet knew how to spell invoice. Darnell, you're the only salesman here who ever treated female customers with respect. I want all three of you on my team. Your pay stays the same, your benefits stay the same, and if you stay for the next 6 months, you'll get a bonus out of my own pocket." Bobby Ray lowered his coffee cup. "What about Chet? Chet no longer works here. Chet no longer owns anything here. Chet is currently in the Smith County Jail for public intoxication and kicking a door that belonged to an 82-year-old woman." A long pause. Then Bobby Ray snorted. Then Darnell started giggling. Then Lupe, stone-faced Lupe who never cracked a smile, actually let out a bark of laughter that echoed through the showroom. "Well, hot damn," Bobby Ray said. "It's about time somebody gave that man what he deserved." The mood in the room shifted instantly. The tension broke. People grabbed donuts. Jesse passed out napkins. I leaned against the reception desk and started laying out my vision for the dealership while the employees listened, asked questions, and slowly, tentatively, started to get excited. "I'm changing the name," I said. "It's going to be Jew Marie Certified Pre-Loved Vehicles. We're going to cater to women buyers. We're going to be transparent about pricing. We're going to offer free car buying workshops on Saturday mornings. We're going to sponsor the local girls' softball team." "And Deal Danny?" I pointed out the window at the giant inflatable gorilla, which was currently deflated and slumped across the roof like a furry avalanche. "Deal Danny's staying. But he's getting a makeover." "What kind of makeover?" Darnell asked through a mouthful of jelly donut. I smiled. "You'll see." The staff meeting lasted about an hour. By the end of it, Bobby Ray had agreed to stay, Lupe was already printing new letterhead, and Darnell was brainstorming marketing ideas with Jesse, who had volunteered to redesign the dealership's logo. Tiffany with and I lingered near the back of the showroom, shifting her weight from foot to foot like a kid waiting outside the principal's office. When everyone else had drifted away to their stations, she finally approached me. "Mrs. Dunn, Miss Collier," she said, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Can I talk to you?" I turned to face her. Up close, I could see the cracks in her facade, the chipped nail polish, the dark circles under her eyes, the faint tremor in her hands. She was probably 30 years old but looked 50. Chet had a way of aging people. "I'm not going to apologize for being with Chet," she said, lifting her chin with a flicker of defiance. "He told me your marriage was already over. He told me you hadn't shared a bed in years. He told me a lot of things." I'm sure he did. Chet told a lot of people a lot of things. It was kind of his specialty. She swallowed hard, and some of the defiance crumbled. "But I also know, I heard about the stuff his mama did to you. The miscarriage. The furniture. The way she talked to you at church." Her voice dropped to a whisper. I should have said something. I was stupid. I thought he was gonna leave you and marry me, and then I'd finally have what you had. Except what you had was, she gestured around the showroom, helplessly, this. A cheater. A liar. A man who kicked an old lady's door because he was too drunk to find the right building. A man who landed himself in county jail while I landed myself a dealership, I added, not unkindly. So what exactly are you asking me for, Tiffany? Absolution? A job? Both? Both, she whispered. Chet fired me last week. I blinked. He fired you? He said I was getting too clingy. He said he needed to focus on the divorce and I was a distraction. She made air quotes with her fingers, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes besides desperation. I saw humiliation. The same humiliation I'd felt 1,000 times during my marriage. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know I'm the other woman. I don't have anywhere else to go. I've been singing in the choir since I was 15. Chet was my first real job outside the church. I don't have a degree. I don't have references. I don't have anything. I studied her for a long moment. Part of me wanted to throw her out. To tell her that sleeping with my husband was a disqualification for employment, and she could go find some other used car lot to work at. That part of me was loud, and angry, and completely justified. But another part of me, the part that had spent 11 years being ground down by the Dunwoody family, recognized a fellow victim when she saw one. Chet didn't just use women. He consumed them. He drained them dry and then threw away the husk. He'd done it to me for 11 years. He'd done it to Tiffany in about 18 months. The only difference between us was timing. "I'll make you a deal," I said. Tiffany looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "You can work here. You'll start as the receptionist. Minimum wage. You'll answer phones, make coffee, and keep your mouth shut about anything you overhear. You will not gossip. You will not flirt with customers. You will not, under any circumstances, sing during office hours. And if I ever catch you anywhere near a man wearing a wedding ring, any wedding ring, you're out on your ass before you can say hallelujah. Understood?" Tiffany's eyes filled with tears. "Understood. Thank you. Thank you so much, Miss Collier. I won't let you down." "You probably will," I said. "But you'll do it on minimum wage, and that's good enough for me." She practically ran to the reception desk before I could change my mind. Jesse sidled up next to me, watching her go with an expression of profound disbelief. "Did you just hire Chet's mistress?" he murmured. "I did." "On purpose?" "Very much on purpose. You know this is insane, right? Like, objectively, certifiably insane?" "Probably." I turned to him and grinned. "But think about it, Jesse. Every time Chet drives past this dealership and sees Tiffany answering the phones, wearing a name tag that says June Marie Certified Pre-Loved Vehicles, he's going to have a stroke. A little one. Just enough to ruin his day. And Tiffany gets to earn an honest paycheck for the first time in her life. It's not redemption. It's not forgiveness. It's just efficiency. I get revenge, she gets a job, and Chet gets high blood pressure. Everyone wins." Jesse stared at me for a beat, then shook his head slowly. "You're terrifying. You know that? I learned from the best." I hooked my arm through his. "Now come on. We've got a gorilla to redecorate." By Wednesday morning, the dealership had been transformed. The old Dunwoody's Deals on Wheels sign had been hauled down and replaced with a brand new, gleaming sign that Jesse had designed himself, June Marie Certified Pre-Loved Vehicles in elegant script, with a logo featuring a crown-wearing gorilla holding a car key. Lupe had updated the website, Darnell had called every single customer on the contact list to spread the news, and Bobby Ray had personally inspected every vehicle on the lot and declared 3 of them unfit for human transportation. Those 3 were hauled off to auction, replaced with gently used sedans that Bobby Ray had sourced from a reputable dealer in Dallas. And Dealin' Danny? Dealin' Danny was now wearing a custom-made wedding veil and a sign that read, "Previously owned by a cheater. Now under new management." The local news caught wind of the story by Wednesday afternoon. A reporter named Cindy with a helmet of blonde hair and an insatiable appetite for small-town drama showed up at the dealership with a camera crew and asked me for an interview. I gave her one, standing in front of Dealin' Danny with a smile on my face and a cup of Lupe's industrial-strength coffee in my hand. "Miss Collier," Cindy said, thrusting her microphone toward me, Is it true that you acquired this dealership as part of your divorce settlement from local businessman Chet Dunwoody? That's correct, Cindy. And I'd like to clarify, it wasn't a settlement. A settlement implies negotiation. What happened was that Mr. Dunwoody attempted to hide his assets from the court, and those assets were recovered and transferred to me. It's less of a divorce story and more of a cautionary tale about what happens when you underestimate your wife. Cindy's eyes lit up. She knew she'd struck gold. And the gorilla? Deal Danny? The veil is certainly a choice. The veil is symbolic, Cindy. It represents the marriage Mr. Dunwoody tried to bury. The crown represents who's in charge now. And the sign, previously owned by a cheater, that's just factual advertising. I believe in transparency. The interview aired on the 5 o'clock news. By 5:30, my phone was blowing up with messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years, old coworkers, distant acquaintances, women from church who'd always been too afraid of Mama Lou to say anything nice to me publicly. They all said the same thing, good for you. Finally. We're so proud of you. And then, at 6 o'clock, my phone rang with a number I recognized all too well. Mama Lou. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. Hello, Mama Lou. How are you this evening? Don't you Mama Lou me, you Jezebel. Her voice was so shrill that Jessie, who was sitting across the room sketching new logo ideas, looked up with alarm. I just saw the news. I saw what you did to my son's business. That gorilla was Chet's pride and joy. And you put a veil on it. I did. It looks fantastic. The veil really brings out his eyes. Don't you sass me. You stole everything from my boy. The money, the business, the lake house, and now you're on television making a mockery of the Dunwoody name. The Dunwoody name's been a mockery for years, Mama Lou. I'm just the first person brave enough to point it out on camera. I leaned back in my chair, propped my feet up on the desk, and let the silence stretch. Now, was there something you needed? Because I've got a dealership to run and a gorilla to accessorize. I'm thinking about adding a matching handbag. Mama Lou made a sound that was somewhere between a scream and a wheeze. You think this is funny? You think any of this is funny? Wait until Sunday. Wait until the Founders' Day picnic. I'm going to stand up in front of that whole congregation and tell them exactly what kind of woman you are. A thief. A liar. A barren, gold-digging, ungrateful little. Careful, I said, my voice dropping to ice. You're about to say something you can't take back. And unlike you, I record my phone calls. Dead silence on the other end. Here's what's going to happen, Mama Lou, I continued, calm and steady. You're going to hang up this phone. You're going to spend the next few days thinking very carefully about what you want to say at the Founders' Day picnic. And then, on Sunday, you're going to show up at church, sit in your usual pew, and watch me make a very generous donation to the women's shelter in the name of the Collier Family Foundation. After that, we'll see what happens. But I can promise you this, if you try to make a scene, the scene you get back will be 10 times bigger. And it won't be me who ends up crying in the parking lot. You don't scare me, Mama Lou hissed, but her voice wavered. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to warn you. There's a difference. I paused. Oh, and Mama Lou? Tell Chet I said hello. Assuming he's made bail by now. I hung up before she could respond. Jesse was staring at me, his pencil frozen mid-sketch. What? I said. She threatened to ruin you at church on Sunday, and you basically told her bring popcorn. That's an accurate summary, yes. You're not worried? She's got 40 years of social capital at First Baptist Tyler. She could turn the whole congregation against you. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the lot where Deal Danny swayed gently in the evening breeze, his veil fluttering like a wedding dress on a gorilla-shaped ghost. Jessie, I spent 11 years being afraid of that woman. 11 years of Sunday dinners where she picked apart my cooking, my housekeeping, my body. 11 years of her telling me I wasn't good enough, wasn't fertile enough, wasn't Christian enough to be a Dunwoody. And you know what? She was right. I wasn't good enough to be a Dunwoody. Because being a Dunwoody means being cruel, and small, and bitter. It means treating people like property and calling it family. It means wearing a red beehive wig to hide the fact that there's nothing underneath but spite. I turned back to face him. So no, I'm not worried about Sunday. I'm looking forward to it. Because for the first time in 11 years, I'm going to walk into that church as June Marie Collier. And Mama Lou can either deal with that or get out of my way. Jesse was quiet for a long moment. Then he set down his pencil, stood up, and wrapped me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. I wish I'd found you sooner, he murmured into my hair. I wish I'd been there for all of it. Every Sunday dinner. Every passive-aggressive comment. Every time she made you feel like you didn't belong. You're here now, I said, hugging him back. That's what matters. We stood like that for a minute, two orphans in a used car dealership, holding on to each other like the world might try to separate us again. Then Jesse pulled back, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, and said, "Okay. Enough feelings. We've got a church picnic to prepare for. What's the plan?" "The plan," I said, "is to be generous, gracious, and impeccably dressed. Also, I'm going to need you to make a speech." "What kind of speech?" "The kind that brings down the house." Thursday morning, I woke up before dawn with a knot in my stomach that had nothing to do with the dealership or Mama Lou or the Founders' Day picnic. Today was the day we visited our mother's grave. I hadn't been there since I was 7 years old. I barely remembered the funeral, just fragments. A gray sky. A tiny coffin. A woman in a black dress lifting me up so I could see over the crowd. I'd been too young to understand what was happening, too young to know that the woman in the black dress was my social worker, and that after the funeral I'd be driven back to a foster home 3 counties away and never see my baby brother again. Until now. Jesse picked me up at 7, a bouquet of yellow roses in the passenger seat. Yellow was our mother's favorite color, he said. He'd learned that from the adoption records, which included a brief note about the birth mother's preferences. She'd liked yellow roses, old country music, and watching the sun set over Lake Texoma. She'd been a waitress at a diner in Ardmore. She'd died of an aneurysm at 34, leaving behind a 7-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son who were immediately swept into a system that treated them like inventory. "I've been out here a few times," Jesse said as we drove north toward Oklahoma. By myself. It felt weird, coming alone. Like I was visiting a stranger. She wasn't a stranger. She was our mother. I know. But I never knew her. I was 2 when she died. I don't have a single memory of her. Not one. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. The only mother I remember is Mama Lou. And those memories are not great. We drove in silence for a while. The Texas landscape rolled past, scrubby oaks, barbed wire fences, the occasional oil pump nodding its head like a mechanical dinosaur. As we crossed the Red River into Oklahoma, I felt something shift in my chest. A loosening. A coming home. The cemetery was small, tucked behind a white clapboard church that had seen better decades. The grass was patchy. The headstones were weathered. But the place was peaceful, quiet, sheltered by an old pecan tree, with a view of the distant Washita River Valley. Our mother's grave was near the back, a modest stone with her name etched in simple letters. Rosemary Collier. Beloved Mother. 1972-2006. Beneath that, a single line that Jesse had added when he'd first found the grave 2 years ago. Your children are searching for each other. I knelt in the grass and placed the yellow roses beneath the headstone. Jesse knelt beside me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The wind rustled the pecan tree. A meadowlark sang somewhere in the distance. "Hi, Mama," I said finally, my voice cracking. "It's me. June. I know I'm about 30 years late, but I made it." Jesse put his hand on my shoulder. I brought Jesse with me, I continued. Your son. He's not a baby anymore. He's 6 feet tall and he's an artist and he's the best person I've ever met. You'd be so proud of him, Mama. He found me. Or I found him. I don't know which. But we're together now. We're together. Jesse's voice joined mine, low and steady. Hey, Mama. It's Jesse. I don't remember you, I wish I did, but I feel like I know you anyway. June has your eyes. She has your stubbornness, too, or at least that's what people tell me. He laughed, a watery, tear-choked sound. We're okay. Both of us. It took a while, but we're okay. And we're going to be better than okay. I promise. We stayed there for an hour, sitting on the grass, telling our mother everything. About the Dunwoodies. About the divorce. About the dealership and the gorilla and the margaritas and the revenge. We told her about the miscarriage, about the years of loneliness, about the moment in a diner in Ardmore when Jesse had walked up to me and said, I've been looking for you my whole life. And then, because grief and joy are cousins who don't always get along, we both started crying at the same time, ugly crying into each other's shoulders while the meadowlark kept singing and the wind kept rustling and the sun climbed higher over the Oklahoma prairie. I wish she was here, Jesse said, his voice muffled against my jacket. I wish she could see us. She can see us. I pulled back and wiped my nose with my sleeve. And I think she's laughing. We're a mess, Jesse. We're a hot, sobbing, emotionally stunted mess. And we're also the 2 luckiest people on the planet, because we found each other in a world that did everything it could to keep us apart. Jesse sniffled. That sounds like a line from a country song. It is. I'm writing one. I'm calling it the Dunwoody Blues. That startled a laugh out of him, and then we were both laughing, crying and laughing at the same time, 2 orphans kneeling in front of their mother's grave, finally whole. When we finally stood up to leave, I touched the headstone one last time. I'll be back, Mama. I promise. And next time, I'll bring better news. This time, I just wanted to tell you that we found each other. We're not lost anymore. Jesse kissed his fingers and pressed them to the stone. Love you, Mama. Rest easy. We walked back to the truck hand in hand, and neither of us said anything for a long time. The drive back to Texas was quiet, but it wasn't an awkward quiet. It was the quiet of 2 people who'd finally said everything that needed to be said. When we crossed back over the Red River, Jesse cleared his throat. June? Yeah? Thank you. For coming with me. I couldn't have done that alone. You've done it alone before. You said so yourself. I know. But it was different this time. This time, I had you there. It felt like closure. Like we finally finished something that started 30 years ago. I reached over and squeezed his hand. We did. And now we get to start something new. Speaking of starting something new. Jesse's voice shifted, the grief giving way to something sharper. We've got 2 days until Sunday. Are you ready? I looked out the window at the Texas landscape, the familiar scrub oaks and barbed wire fences, and smiled. I've been ready for 11 years. Friday passed in a blur of preparations. I met with Patricia Okonkwo, my lawyer, to go over the documents I'd need for Sunday. Patricia had done some digging, and what she'd found was explosive. Mama Lou had indeed been skimming from the church's charitable foundation for decades, siphoning small amounts into a personal account that she used to fund her lifestyle. The total wasn't huge, maybe $40,000 over 30 years, but it was enough to destroy her reputation and, potentially, land her in legal trouble. Is this enough for criminal charges? I asked, flipping through the bank statements Patricia had assembled. It's enough for an investigation. Whether it leads to charges depends on how cooperative the church is, and how good her lawyer is. Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying me with sharp, intelligent eyes. She was a tall black woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, with a reputation for destroying opposing counsel in court. But for your purposes, it's definitely enough for Sunday. You wanted leverage. This is leverage. It's not about leverage, I said. It's about truth. Mama Lou's been pretending to be the moral compass of First Baptist Tyler for 40 years. She's destroyed people's reputations based on rumors and half-truths. She's driven out pastors who tried to stand up to her. She's used that church as her personal kingdom. And the whole time, she's been stealing from the collection plate. The collection plate is metaphorical. The money came from the foundation's account. Still stealing. I closed the folder and slid it into my purse. Thank you, Patricia. I'll make sure this gets into the right hands. Which hands are those? The congregation's. Patricia smiled. It was a shark smile, all teeth and no mercy. I wish I could be there to see it. Call me afterward. I want all the details. Saturday, Jesse and I drove out to the lake house for a final walkthrough before the barbecue. The place looked incredible. We'd spent the week replacing the furniture, repainting the living room, and, most satisfyingly, removing every trace of Chet's existence from the property. The mounted base was gone. The deer heads were gone. The massive flat-screen TV that Chet had spent more time with than his own wife was gone. In their place were Jesse's paintings, my mother's portrait, and a sense of peace that the house had never had when Chet lived there. This is going to be our family home, I said, standing in the middle of the living room. Yours and mine. We'll have Thanksgiving here. Christmas. Every holiday we missed for the last 30 years. Jesse's eyes got misty again. You mean that? I mean it. This isn't my house. It's our house. The Collier house. And the first official Collier family event is going to be the victory barbecue after church tomorrow. We haven't won yet. I turned to him, the folder of documents heavy in my purse, the weight of 11 years of suffering finally ready to be unloaded. We won the moment we found each other, I said. Tomorrow is just the victory lap. Sunday morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect June day that made East Texas feel like God's own backyard. I put on my best dress, a floral print wrap dress that I'd bought specifically for this occasion, and spent an hour on my hair and makeup. Jesse put on a suit, a real suit, navy blue with a pale pink tie, and he looked so handsome and so much like our mother that I almost cried before we even left the house. How do I look? He asked, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. Like a man who's about to bring down the house. Good. That's exactly what I was going for. We drove to First Baptist Tyler in my new car, a sensible but stylish sedan that I'd picked out from the dealership's inventory. We parked in the back lot, because I wanted to make an entrance. The Founders' Day picnic was being held in the fellowship hall after the service, but the main event, the worship service itself, was where Mama Lou planned to make her move. I knew it. She'd been telegraphing it all week, spreading rumors through the church gossip network, rallying her allies in the quilting circle, preparing to publicly shame me in front of the entire congregation. She had no idea what was coming. We slipped into the back pew just as the opening hymn began. The church was packed, Founders' Day always drew a crowd, and this year was no exception. I spotted Mama Lou in her usual spot near the front, her red beehive wig towering above the congregation like a warning beacon. She was wearing a purple pantsuit and clutching a Bible the size of a small suitcase. Chet was nowhere to be seen. He was probably still licking his wounds, or possibly still in jail. Either way, his absence made things easier. The service proceeded normally. Hymns. Announcements. A sermon from Pastor Gary about forgiveness and community that was so bland and so carefully neutral that I knew Mama Lou had gotten to him first. And then, during the time for prayer requests, Mama Lou stood up. Pastor Gary, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, I have a prayer request I'd like to share with the congregation. Pastor Gary looked nervous. He'd been warned, probably, about what was coming. But he was too spineless to stop it. Go ahead, Sister Lou. Mama Lou turned to face the congregation, and her eyes found me in the back pew. A triumphant smile spread across her face. "I'd like to ask the congregation to pray for my son Chet," she said. "As many of you know, Chet has been through a terrible ordeal this week. His wife of 11 years, his wife, schemed behind his back, conspired with his own brother, and stole everything he owned. His business. His home. His savings. She left him with nothing, and she did it with a smile on her face." Gasps rippled through the congregation. Heads turned toward me. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, my expression serene. "This woman," Mama Lou continued, pointing a trembling finger at me, "is a wolf in sheep's clothing. She sat in this church for 11 years, pretending to be a good Christian wife, while all along she was plotting to destroy my son. And now she's flaunting her stolen wealth on television, making a mockery of the Dunwoody name, and corrupting Travis Lee, my own son, into helping her. So I ask you, church family, to pray for Chet. And to pray for this woman's soul, because it is in grave, grave danger." She sat down, fanning herself with a church bulletin, the picture of wounded righteousness. The congregation murmured. People were looking at me. Waiting. Pastor Gary cleared his throat. "Thank you, Sister Lou. Does anyone else have a prayer request?" I stood up. "Actually, Pastor, I have a few announcements. And since we're all here, I think now is the perfect time." Pastor Gary's face went pale. "Miss Collier, this is a worship service, not a—" "It's fine, Pastor. I won't take long. And I think the congregation deserves to hear the truth before we all go to the picnic." I walked down the aisle, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor, until I reached the pulpit. Pastor Gary stepped aside instinctively, as if he knew he couldn't stop me. "May I?" He nodded weakly. I turned to face the congregation. A sea of familiar faces stared back at me, the Sunday school teachers, the potluck organizers, the women who'd gossiped about me behind my back for years, the men who'd shaken Chet's hand and called him a fine Christian businessman. They were all there, and they were all about to learn the truth. "My name is June Marie Collier," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Some of you know me as June Marie Dunwoody. As of this week, I am no longer a Dunwoody. My divorce from Chet is final, and I'd like to clear up a few things Mama Lou left out of her prayer request." Mama Lou's face was turning an interesting shade of magenta. "First, the money Mama Lou claims I stole from Chet was our marital property. Chet transferred it to his brother in an attempt to hide it from the court. That's called fraudulent conveyance. It's illegal. I didn't steal anything. I simply recovered what was legally mine. Second, the business Mama Lou mentioned was purchased with marital funds. I was the bookkeeper for that business for 11 years. I worked there without pay, without recognition, and without thanks. The dealership is now in my name, and it's being run better than Chet ever ran it. You can check the reviews online if you don't believe me. Third, and this is the part Mama Lou definitely doesn't want me to mention, the son she claims I corrupted, Travis Lee, is not her son at all." I paused, letting the silence stretch. Travis Lee Dunwoody was adopted as a toddler through a backdoor arrangement that Mama Lou orchestrated because she couldn't have another child. His birth name is Jesse Collier. He is my biological brother. My mother's son. My blood. And every cent Chet transferred to him, he transferred straight to me, because he's been loyal to me from the day we found each other 2 years ago. The congregation erupted. People were gasping, whispering, turning to each other with wide eyes. Mama Lou shot to her feet, her wig quivering with rage. "That's a lie. Travis Lee is my son. I raised him. I fed him. I clothed him. How dare you?" "Sit down, Mama Lou." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I'm not finished." She didn't sit, but she didn't advance either. She stood frozen in her pew, clutching her Bible, her face a mask of fury and fear. "But I didn't come here today to talk about my divorce," I continued, turning back to the congregation. I came here to make a donation. As some of you know, I've come into some money recently. And I'd like to give half of it, $650,000, to the Smith County Women's Shelter. The congregation gasped again, but this time the sound was different, surprise mixed with awe. $650,000 was more than the shelter's entire annual budget. That money will be donated in the name of the Collier Family Foundation, I said. In honor of my mother, Rosemary Collier, and in honor of my brother, Jesse, who taught me what family really means. Jesse stood up from the back pew, tall and dignified in his navy suit. And I'd like to add something, if I may. I nodded. He walked down the aisle and joined me at the pulpit, his presence calm and commanding. My name is Jesse Collier, he said, addressing the congregation. For 34 years, I was called Travis Lee Dunwoody. The woman who raised me, Mama Lou, told me I was a burden. She told me my lifestyle was an abomination. She told me I should be grateful she'd taken me in, even as she made it clear I would never truly belong. He paused, and his voice hardened. That woman is not my mother. She is the person who prevented me from finding my real family for 3 decades. She is the person who watched my sister suffer in an abusive marriage and did nothing. She is the person who stood up in this church 5 minutes ago and lied to all of you about what happened. And today, I am telling the truth. Jesse pulled out a folder of his own, the documents Patricia had prepared, and held them up. Mama Lou Dunwoody has been stealing from this church for 30 years. The Dunwoody Family Charitable Foundation, which she's been soliciting donations for since 1995. It doesn't exist. The money went into a personal account. I have the bank records right here. I have the IRS filings. I have everything. The church went absolutely silent. Mama Lou's face drained of all color. Her wig, for the first time all morning, was completely still. That's not true, she shrieked. Those are forged. She forged them. These are certified bank records, Mama Lou, I said quietly. They're not forged. And the IRS has already been notified. You're going to have a lot of explaining to do. To the congregation. To the authorities. To God. I turned back to the congregation. I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came here to tell the truth, to make a donation, and to ask all of you to remember one thing: the most dangerous person in the world isn't the one who tells lies. It's the one who pretends to be righteous while stealing from the people who trust her. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The entire church was frozen, suspended in the shock of what had just happened. And then, from the back pew, a voice rang out. Amen. It was an old man in a worn-out suit jacket. I recognized him as Mr. Henderson, a retired farmer who'd been attending First Baptist for 50 years and had never, to anyone's knowledge, spoken during a service before. Amen, he said again, louder this time. That woman's been running this church like a dictator since Nixon was in office. It's about damn time somebody said something. The congregation erupted. Not in chaos this time, in applause. In laughter. In a dozen different voices calling out agreement. Mama Lou stared around her, wild-eyed, her wig slipping sideways on her head. The church ladies she'd thought were her loyal followers were turning away from her, whispering to each other, shaking their heads. Pastor Gary had retreated to the corner of the pulpit, looking like a man who'd just watched a tornado touch down and was praying it would miss the fellowship hall. Jesse and I walked back down the aisle, arm in arm. As we passed Mama Lou's pew, I paused. Your wig's crooked, I said quietly. You might want to fix it before the picnic. Then we walked out of the church, into the bright June sunshine, and stood together in the parking lot, breathing the free air. That, Jesse said, was the single most terrifying and satisfying moment of my entire life. Was your hand shaking? My everything was shaking. I think I sweated through my suit jacket. Did anyone notice? Probably. But they were too busy watching Mama Lou's wig slide off her head to care. Jesse started laughing, a wild, giddy, slightly hysterical laugh. I joined in. We stood there in the church parking lot, two orphans who'd just torn down a 30-year empire of lies, laughing like maniacs as the congregation poured out of the church behind us. The Founders' Day picnic was about to begin. And for the first time in its history, Mama Lou Dunwoody would not be running it. "Come on," I said, linking my arm through his. "Let's go eat some potato salad. I hear the quilting circle ladies make a mean one. And I think they're on our side now." "They are," Jessie said, glancing back at the church doors. "I saw 3 of them high-five each other when you mentioned the IRS." We walked toward the fellowship hall, the summer sun warm on our faces, the future stretching out ahead of us like a Texas highway at dawn. And somewhere behind us, Mama Lou was trying to find her wig. Life was strange. Life was beautiful. And we were just getting started. Chet Dunwoody's lawsuit landed on my desk like a dead cockroach, unwelcome, ugly, and entirely predictable. The papers claimed I'd defrauded him, conspired with his brother, and inflicted severe emotional distress by putting a wedding veil on an inflatable gorilla. He was suing me for $2 million in damages, the return of the dealership, the lake house, and, I swear to God this was in the filing, pain and suffering caused by public humiliation at the hands of the plaintiff's ex-wife and her co-conspirator sibling. Patricia Okonkwo read the complaint aloud in her office, her voice flat as a pancake, and when she got to the part about the gorilla, she had to stop and take a sip of water because she was laughing too hard. "Pain and suffering," she repeated, dabbing her eyes. "From a gorilla. In a veil." "It was a very tasteful veil," I said. "I got it on sale at Hobby Lobby." "Chet's lawyer is either incompetent or desperate. Possibly both." Patricia tossed the complaint onto her desk. "He's claiming you orchestrated a criminal conspiracy with your brother to deprive him of his assets. Problem is, the assets were marital property, and he's the one who tried to hide them. That's like a bank robber suing the bank because someone stole his loot. So what do? We do what I always do with garbage lawsuits." Patricia leaned back, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. "We file a counterclaim for malicious prosecution, abuse of process, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Then we attach every piece of evidence we have, the audio recordings, the bank records, the text messages where he called you a barren gold-digging bitch, and we serve it to his lawyer with a nice little note that says, 'See you in court, sweetheart.'" I signed the counterclaim that afternoon. Patricia filed it the next morning. And 3 weeks later, we all found ourselves in the Smith County Courthouse, standing before Judge Roberta Jenkins, who was exactly the kind of woman you wanted presiding over your divorce revenge case. Judge Jenkins was in her 60s, a black woman with silver-streaked hair and a glare that could strip paint off a barn. She'd grown up in East Texas, worked her way through law school as a single mother, and had spent 20 years on the bench dealing with every flavor of fool the state of Texas could produce. Her courtroom had a reputation: if you were honest, you'd be treated fairly. If you were lying, you'd be destroyed. Chet showed up in a cheap suit that didn't fit him right. He'd probably borrowed it from someone, since all his money was in my bank account. His lawyer was a nervous young man named Bradley Whitfield who looked like he'd graduated law school approximately 15 minutes ago and had drawn the short straw at his firm. Bradley kept adjusting his tie and glancing at the door, like he was hoping someone would come rescue him. Mama Lou was there too, planted in the gallery in her purple pantsuit and a brand new red wig that was even taller than the last one. She'd spent the week since the church disaster lying low, avoiding the Piggly Wiggly, and telling anyone who'd listen that I'd forged the bank records. The congregation, to their credit, had mostly stopped listening. "All rise," the bailiff called. "The Honorable Judge Roberta Jenkins presiding." Judge Jenkins swept into the courtroom, her robes billowing, and settled onto the bench with the air of a woman who had no time for nonsense. She peered down at the case file, then at Chet, then at me, then back at Chet. "Mr. Dunwoody," she said, her voice carrying the faintest trace of East Texas drawl. "You are suing your ex-wife for $2 million. Is that correct?" Chet stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Yes, Your Honor. She stole Sit down, Mr. Dunwoody. You speak when I ask you to speak. Chet sat. Judge Jenkins flipped through the file. I've read the complaint. I've read the counterclaim. I've reviewed the exhibits, including, she paused, squinting at one page, Exhibit G, which appears to be a photograph of a 30-foot inflatable gorilla wearing a bridal veil. Mr. Dunwoody, you're claiming this gorilla caused you emotional distress? The gorilla was my mascot. Chet burst out. She put a veil on it. And a sign that said previously owned by a cheater. Everyone in Tyler saw it. The sign was a factual statement, Your Honor, I said, standing. Mr. Dunwoody did cheat. With multiple women. I have documentation. Judge Jenkins looked at me over the top of her reading glasses. Multiple women? At least 3 that I know of, Your Honor. Including a woman named Tiffany with an I, who is currently employed as my receptionist. She's willing to testify. Chet's lawyer, Bradley, jumped up. Objection. Tiffany's testimony would be prejudicial and irrelevant to the financial claims. Sustained, Judge Jenkins said. We're not here to litigate Mr. Dunwoody's infidelity. We're here to determine whether Miss Collier illegally obtained his assets. Miss Collier, keep it relevant. Yes, Your Honor. I remained standing. The relevance is this. Mr. Dunwoody transferred our marital assets to his brother specifically to prevent me from receiving my equitable share in the divorce. That is fraudulent conveyance under Texas law. I didn't steal his money. I simply recovered what was legally mine before he could hide it. And how did you accomplish this recovery? My brother, Jesse Collier, who was adopted by the Dunwoody family as a toddler under the name Travis Lee, returned the assets to me voluntarily. Mr. Dunwoody trusted his brother to hide the money. He didn't know his brother was my brother. Judge Jenkins's eyebrows rose about a quarter inch. Your biological brother? Yes, Your Honor. We were separated in foster care as children. We reconnected 2 years ago. Mr. Dunwoody never knew. The judge turned to Chet, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, not quite amusement, not quite pity. Something closer to wonder at the sheer cosmic irony of the situation. Mr. Dunwoody, let me make sure I understand. You transferred your assets to your brother to hide them from your wife. Unbeknownst to you, your brother was actually your wife's long-lost biological brother. And he gave the money back to her. Am I correct? Chet's face was turning that familiar shade of purple. She set me up. The whole thing was a setup. From the beginning. Mr. Dunwoody, Judge Jenkins said, her voice dropping to a dangerous calm, you conspired to defraud your wife and the divorce court. You initiated a fraudulent transfer of marital assets. You have now filed a lawsuit attempting to recover assets you illegally concealed in the first place. Do you understand how this looks from where I'm sitting? Bradley the lawyer tugged at his collar. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that he made some questionable decisions, but... Questionable decisions? Judge Jenkins removed her glasses and fixed Bradley with a stare that could have wilted a cactus. Mr. Whitfield, your client committed fraud. He perjured himself on financial disclosure forms. He attempted to leave his wife of 11 years destitute. And now he's wasting this court's time with a lawsuit that has about as much legal merit as a parking ticket written in crayon. Do not stand in my courtroom and call that questionable. Bradley sat down. Hard. Miss Collier, the judge continued, turning to me. You seem to have your affairs in order. What is it you want from this court? I want the lawsuit dismissed with prejudice, Your Honor. I want Mr. Dunwoody to pay my legal fees. And I want a ruling that confirms my legal ownership of the dealership, the lake house, and all recovered assets, so Mr. Dunwoody can never file another frivolous claim against me. Reasonable. Judge Jenkins made a note. Anything else? I hesitated. Actually, Your Honor, there is one more thing. The courtroom went quiet. Mr. Dunwoody's mother, Mama Lou Dunwoody, has been harassing me since the divorce. She's shown up at my workplace. She's called my phone at all hours. She spread false rumors about me to my employees and my church community. I would like a permanent restraining order preventing her from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my home or business. Mama Lou shot to her feet in the gallery. That's ridiculous. I never. Bailiff. Judge Jenkins's gavel cracked down like a thunderclap. Remove that woman from my courtroom. Now. The bailiff, a large man who looked like he'd played linebacker in a former life, moved toward Mama Lou. She clutched her purse to her chest and started backing toward the door. This is an outrage, she shrieked. This is persecution. I am a God-fearing Christian woman and I will not be treated like a criminal in my own town. You're not being treated like a criminal, ma'am, Judge Jenkins said. You're being removed for contempt of court. There's a difference. Bailiff, escort her out. And if she says one more word, put her in holding until I'm finished here. Mama Lou opened her mouth, then looked at the bailiff, looked at the judge, and apparently decided that even she wasn't crazy enough to test Judge Roberta Jenkins. She clamped her lips shut and allowed herself to be marched out of the courtroom, her wig wobbling dangerously with every step. The doors swung shut behind her. The courtroom exhaled. Now, Judge Jenkins said, turning back to Chet, who looked like he wanted to crawl under the defense table and die. Mr. Dunwoody, I've heard enough. Your lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. You will pay Miss Collier's legal fees in the amount of $35,000. You will pay an additional $50,000 in punitive damages for abuse of process. All assets currently in Miss Collier's possession are confirmed as her sole and separate property. And I am granting the restraining order against your mother. Chet's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Bradley the lawyer stared at the floor like he was hoping it would swallow him. But she can't just, Chet sputtered. Mr. Dunwoody, Judge Jenkins said, leaning forward, I've been on this bench for 20 years. I've seen husbands cheat on their wives, steal from their wives, abuse their wives, and lie to this court about all of it. But you? You might be the dumbest man who's ever set foot in my courtroom. You handed your entire fortune to a man you didn't know was your wife's brother, and then you sued to get it back. That's not fraud. That's not conspiracy. That's natural selection with a necktie. She banged her gavel. Case dismissed. Court is adjourned. And just like that, it was over. I walked out of the courthouse into the blazing July sun, Patricia on one side, Jessie on the other. The air smelled like hot asphalt and victory. I felt lighter than I'd felt in 11 years, lighter than I'd felt in my entire life. He called it natural selection, Jessie said, still marveling. With a necktie. I'm getting that embroidered on a pillow. I'm getting it painted on the dealership wall, I said. Right next to the gorilla. Patricia laughed and shook my hand. You were an excellent client, Jean Marie. If you ever need a lawyer again, and I hope you don't, call me. I'll give you the repeat customer discount. She headed off to her car, and Jessie and I stood on the courthouse steps, watching the traffic roll by on Broadway Avenue. Where to now? Jessie asked. I thought about it. The lake house. I want to sit on the dock, drink a beer, and watch the sunset without a single thing to worry about. That sounds perfect. We started toward the parking lot. But before we got 10 steps, the courthouse doors banged open behind us, and Chet Dunwoody came storming down the steps, his cheap suit jacket flapping, his face twisted with rage. Jean Marie. Jean Marie. I turned around. Yes, Chet? He stopped 3 feet away, breathing hard. Up close, I could see how much he'd deteriorated in the weeks since the divorce. He'd lost weight. His eyes were bloodshot. There was a stain on his shirt collar that looked like it had been there for days. The man who'd once swaggered around Tyler like he owned the place now looked like someone you'd cross the street to avoid. You ruined me, he said, his voice cracking. You took everything. My money. My business. My reputation. Even my own mother can't show her face in town anymore. I didn't take anything, Chet. You gave it all away. Literally. To my brother. The only thing I did was accept the gift. He stared at me, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not anger. Not hatred. Something closer to confusion. Like he genuinely couldn't understand how any of this had happened. Was any of it real? He asked quietly. The marriage. The 11 years. Anything? I considered the question. It deserved an honest answer. The first year was real, I said. The first year, I loved you. I thought you loved me. But then your mama moved in, and you stopped being the man I married. You became her son again. Her little boy who could do no wrong. And I became the outsider. The interloper. The barren waste of a wedding ring. I paused. You know what your mama said to me after my miscarriage? She said, maybe next time you'll be stronger. A real Dunwoody woman wouldn't have had a problem. And you just stood there, Chet. You stood there and let her say it. He flinched. I didn't know she said that. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. I stepped closer, meeting his eyes. You want to know why I'm not sorry about any of this? Because I spent 11 years waiting for you to choose me. To defend me. To be my husband instead of her son. And you never did. Not once. So no, the marriage wasn't real. Not after that first year. But that's on you, Chet. Not on me. He didn't say anything. Just stood there on the courthouse steps, his shoulders slumped, his cheap suit hanging off him like a deflated balloon. Goodbye, Chet, I said. I hope you figure out how to be a better man. But I'm not going to be around to find out. I turned and walked away. Jessie fell into step beside me, and we didn't look back. 2 weeks later, we threw the barbecue. The Thanks for Not Being a Dunwoody Victory Barbecue, as Jessie had christened it, was held at the lake house on a perfect Saturday afternoon. We'd invited everyone, the dealership employees, the church quilting circle ladies who'd switched to our side, Mr. Henderson the shouting farmer and his entire extended family, Patricia the lawyer, and a rotating cast of neighbors and friends and curious townspeople who'd followed the saga and wanted to celebrate the ending. Jessie manned the smoker, producing brisket so tender it fell apart if you looked at it wrong. I handled the sides, potato salad, coleslaw, baked beans, and 3 kinds of pie. Bobby Ray brought his famous jalapeno cornbread. Lupe brought a vat of her grandmother's salsa that could strip paint. Darnell brought his karaoke machine and a questionable amount of enthusiasm. Even Tiffany with an eye showed up, wearing a demure sundress and carrying a store-bought fruit platter. She'd been working at the dealership for 2 months now and had, against all odds, become a decent receptionist. She still sang to herself sometimes, but she'd stopped flirting with customers, and she'd started taking night classes at the community college. I wasn't ready to call her a friend, exactly, but I'd stopped wanting to strangle her every time I saw her. Progress. The party was in full swing by 3 o'clock. Kids were splashing in the lake. The quilting circle ladies had claimed the shady spot under the pecan tree and were gossiping with the intensity of CIA analysts. Darnell was belting out friends in low places on the karaoke machine while Bobby Ray provided backup harmonies. Jessie was holding court by the smoker, explaining the art of brisket to a group of mesmerized guests. I was standing on the deck, sipping a margarita and watching it all, when the gate at the end of the driveway creaked open. And in walked Mama Lou. The party noise dropped by about 50%. Heads turned. Conversations trailed off mid-sentence. Mama Lou was wearing a new wig, a modest gray bob this time, not the towering red beehive, and a simple floral dress that looked nothing like her usual purple pantsuits. She was holding a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil. Her face was pale, and she was walking with the hesitant steps of a woman who knew she wasn't welcome but had come anyway. Jean Marie, she said, stopping at the edge of the deck. I know I'm not invited. I came to. She didn't seem to know how to finish the sentence. I set down my margarita. You came to what, Mama Lou? She took a deep breath. To apologize. The silence that followed was so complete you could hear the ice melting in people's glasses. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Mama Lou continued, her voice unsteady. Since the court case. Since the church. Pastor Gary has been talking to me. About humility. About repentance. About making things right. She swallowed hard. I was awful to you, Jean Marie. For 11 years, I was awful. I said things no woman should ever say to another woman. I blamed you for things that weren't your fault. I treated you like an outsider in your own home. And the miscarriage. Her voice cracked. The miscarriage was my fault. I made you move that armoire. I knew you were pregnant. I didn't care. I wanted to prove you weren't strong enough. And you lost your baby because of it. Tears were streaming down her face now. The casserole dish trembled in her hands. I can't undo any of it. I know that. But I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I stood on the deck, looking down at this woman who'd made my life a living hell for 11 years. The woman who'd called me barren. The woman who'd schemed and lied and stolen. The woman whose wig I'd personally watched fly through a Piggly Wiggly parking lot. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave. To throw her casserole in the lake. To let her suffer the way she'd made me suffer. But another part of me, the part that had visited my mother's grave, that had found my brother, that had finally learned what family really meant, knew that holding on to hatred was just another way of letting the Dunwoodies win. Jesse, I called, without taking my eyes off Mama Lou. You should hear this too. Jesse walked over from the smoker, wiping his hands on a towel. He saw Mama Lou and stopped dead. What is she doing here? She came to apologize. I turned to him. I think you should hear it. Jesse's jaw tightened. For a long moment, I thought he was going to walk away. But then he nodded, once, and came to stand beside me. Mama Lou looked at him, her adopted son, the boy she'd called a disappointment, the man she'd rejected for being who he was, and the tears came faster. Travis Lee, she whispered. Jesse. I don't even know what to call you anymore. Jesse, he said flatly. My name is Jesse. Jesse. She said it like it hurt. I failed you. More than I failed anyone. I took you into my home, and I never let you forget you weren't really mine. I made you feel like a burden. And when you told me who you really were, I rejected you. My own son. I rejected you because I was too proud and too hateful to see what was right in front of me. She held out the casserole dish with shaking hands. I know this doesn't fix anything. I know I can't make up for 34 years with a casserole. But I had to come. I had to try. Jesse stared at her for a long, agonizing moment. The entire party was watching. Even Darnell had paused the karaoke machine. Then Jesse walked down the deck steps, took the casserole dish from her hands, and set it on the picnic table. You're right, he said. A casserole doesn't fix anything. 34 years of rejection doesn't get erased because you showed up with a hot dish and some tears. Mama Lou's face crumpled. But, Jesse continued, his voice softening just slightly, showing up as more than you've ever done before. So I'll give you this much, you can stay. You can eat. You can sit at the table and be part of this for one afternoon. But you're not my mother. That title belongs to Rosemary Collier, and I won't pretend otherwise. If you can accept that, then welcome to the party. If you can't, then leave now. Mama Lou nodded, tears still streaming. I accept. I accept whatever you'll give me. Jesse turned and walked back up the deck steps. As he passed me, he muttered, I can't believe I just did that. I can, I said quietly. You're a better person than she ever was. And you're a better person than me, because I was about to push her in the lake. That startled a laugh out of him. He shook his head and headed back to the smoker. Mama Lou found a seat at the far end of the picnic table, away from the quilting circle ladies who were eyeing her like vultures. She sat quietly, eating a small plate of brisket, not trying to dominate the conversation or control the room. It was the quietest I'd ever seen her. The party gradually resumed its rhythm. Darnell restarted the karaoke. The kids went back to splashing. The margarita pitcher made another round. I was standing by the drink table, refilling my glass, when Jesse appeared at my elbow. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking." "About what?" "About what Judge Jenkins said. About natural selection with a necktie." He grinned. "I think Chet's the necktie. Mama Lou's the necktie. The whole Dunwoody family is just one long, ugly necktie, and we finally unknotted it." I raised my margarita. "To unknotting neckties. To unknotting neckties." We clinked glasses and drank. The sun was starting to set over Cedar Creek, painting the lake in shades of gold and pink. The party was winding down. Kids were getting sleepy. The quilting circle ladies were packing up their lawn chairs. It was, by any measure, a perfect evening. And then Mama Lou stood up to leave. She walked toward the deck, where Jessie and I were standing, and hesitated at the bottom of the steps. "June Marie," she said. "Jessie. Thank you. For letting me stay." "You're welcome," I said. "But Mama Lou, if you ever call me Baron again, or say one word against my brother, or try to pull any of your old tricks, I will personally ensure that your next wig ends up in the lake. Understood?" She almost smiled. "Understood." She turned to go, walking carefully across the lawn toward the gate. But she'd only made it about 20 feet when her foot came down on something small, round, and extremely slippery. A deviled egg. Abandoned by some careless child on the grass. Mama Lou's feet flew out from under her. Her arms windmilled. The gray bob wig launched off her head like a startled pigeon and sailed through the air in a perfect arc, landing directly in the kiddie pool with a splash. Mama Lou herself stumbled sideways, grabbed at the edge of the pool for support, missed entirely, and toppled headfirst into the water. She came up sputtering, her real hair, thin and gray and plastered to her scalp, dripping in her face. A watermelon half that had been floating in the pool bobbed gently against her shoulder. The party, which had been winding down, snapped back to full attention. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. And then the laughter started. The quilting circle ladies howled. Mr. Henderson slapped his knee so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. Darnell dropped his microphone. Bobby Ray laughed so hard he started coughing. Even Tiffany With and I, who'd been quietly eating fruit salad in the corner, was giggling behind her hand. Jessie and I looked at each other. Then at Mama Lou, sitting in the kiddie pool with a watermelon half bobbing next to her and her wig floating like a drowned squirrel. Then back at each other. "I didn't plan that," I said. "I know you didn't. But I'm not mad about it." "Neither am I." I walked down the deck steps, grabbed a towel from the stack by the pool, and held it out to Mama Lou. She took it, her hands shaking with humiliation and cold and possibly the faintest trace of humor. "You okay?" I asked. "I slipped on a deviled egg," she said, her voice hollow with disbelief. "I came here to apologize and I fell in a kiddie pool in front of the entire town." "The wig retrieval is going to be tricky," Jessie called from the deck. "It's pretty waterlogged." Mama Lou looked at the wig floating sadly in the pool. Then at me. Then at the party guests, who were still laughing but not unkindly. And then, miraculously, impossibly, she started to laugh too. It was a rusty, creaky sound, like a door that hadn't been opened in decades. But it was real laughter, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and unexpected. "I suppose I deserved that," she said, wringing water out of her dress. "I suppose you did," I agreed. I helped her out of the pool, wrapped the towel around her shoulders, and walked her to the gate. A few people called out good-natured jokes as she passed, "Nice dive, Mama Lou," and "The wig gets a 7 out of 10. And she took it all with a grimace that was almost a smile. At the gate, she paused. "You're going to be okay, aren't you?" she asked. "You and Jessie. You're going to be fine." "We're already fine," I said. "We've been fine since the day we found each other. It just took a while for the rest of the world to catch up." She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry it took me so long. I'm sorry for all of it." "I know. Goodbye, Mama Lou. Goodbye, June Marie." She walked down the driveway, a dripping, defeated woman in a soaked floral dress, carrying her dignity in one hand and her ruined wig in the other. It was the most human I'd ever seen her. I watched until she reached her car, then turned back to the party. Jessie was waiting on the deck with a fresh margarita in each hand. "That," he said, handing me my drink, "was the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. A deviled egg. A rogue deviled egg took down the most feared woman in Smith County. The universe has a sense of humor." "Apparently so." He clinked his glass against mine. "To the universe. And to deviled eggs. And to us. And to us." We drank, and the party went on, and the sun set over Cedar Creek, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. 6 months later, I was sitting in my office at the dealership, my office, with my name on the door and my gorilla on the roof, when Jesse burst in waving his phone. "Have you seen this?" he demanded. "Seen what?" He shoved the phone in my face. It was open to the Smith County Mugshots page, a website that, for reasons I'd never understood, had a dedicated following among the good people of East Texas. There, staring back at me, was Chet Dunwoody. His mugshot was a disaster. His hair was uncombed. His eyes were glassy. He was wearing a stained t-shirt and the expression of a man who'd hit rock bottom and kept digging. The caption read, "Dunwoody, Chester Ray. Public intoxication. Disorderly conduct. Resisting arrest." "Read the details," Jesse said, barely containing his glee. I scrolled down. At approximately 11:45 p.m. on Saturday, officers responded to reports of a disturbance at the Quick Stop gas station on Highway 31. The subject, identified as Chester Ray Dunwoody, was found attempting to fight the air compressor after it allegedly looked at him funny. When officers attempted to intervene, the subject fled on foot, tripped over a bag of mulch, and was apprehended in the parking lot. The subject is currently being held without bond pending a psychiatric evaluation. I read it twice. Then 3 times. "He tried to fight an air compressor," I said. "He lost to an air compressor. He ran from the police and tripped over a bag of mulch." "Mulch, June. Mulch." We looked at each other. And then we both absolutely lost it, laughing until tears streamed down our faces, until Lupe knocked on the door to ask if everything was okay, until we had to sit down and catch our breath. "Should we send him bail money?" Jesse asked, wiping his eyes. "Absolutely not. But we should send that mugshot to Judge Jenkins. She'll appreciate the follow-up." Chet's mugshot became the unofficial screensaver of the dealership. Darnell printed it out and taped it to the breakroom fridge. Tiffany took one look at it and said, "I can't believe I slept with that man," which made Bobby Ray laugh so hard he had to go lie down. And as for me? I framed it and put it on my desk, right next to the signed divorce papers and the pink glitter pen. A few more things happened, in the months that followed. Chet took a plea deal and was sentenced to probation and community service. He got a job working the night shift at the very same Quick Stop where he'd tried to fight the air compressor. His employee name tag, originally printed as Chet, was quickly vandalized by a Sharpie-wielding coworker to read Cheat. Management didn't bother replacing it. Customers started calling him Cheat to his face. He had no choice but to answer. Jesse's art gallery took off. His first solo show, Bloodlines, featured a series of paintings about our family's journey, foster homes, lost years, the diner where we'd found each other, the church where we'd confronted Mama Lou. The show sold out in 3 days. The local paper ran a profile calling him East Texas's most exciting new artist. I cried reading it. Mama Lou, to everyone's shock, actually changed. She attended humility counseling, as mandated by Pastor Gary, and somewhere along the way, something clicked. She started volunteering at the women's shelter, the same shelter I donated to. She cut off her red wig entirely and went with a simple gray bob. She never apologized to me directly in words, but she started sending me Christmas cards, signed simply, Lou. I didn't write back, but I didn't throw them away either. The dealership thrived. Jim Marie certified pre-loved vehicles became the top-rated used car lot in Smith County. My women's car buying workshops were so popular we had to start a waiting list. Dealin' Danny the gorilla became a local celebrity. People drove from 3 counties away to take selfies with the inflatable gorilla wearing a wedding veil. I kept the sign, too, previously owned by a cheater. It was still factually accurate. And every Sunday, Jesse and I had dinner together. Sometimes at the lake house. Sometimes at his apartment above the gallery. Sometimes we drove up to Oklahoma and ate at the diner in Ardmore, the one where we'd first found each other, and we'd order the chicken fried steak and talk about our mother and laugh until the other customers stared. One evening, about a year after the divorce, we were sitting on the dock at the lake house, watching the sunset, when Jesse turned to me with a strange expression. "I got something for you," he said. "What is it?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped for a second, but when he opened it, it wasn't a ring. It was a locket, silver and delicate, with a tiny rose engraved on the front. "Open it," he said. I did. Inside was a photograph, faded and creased with age, of a woman with hazel eyes and a crooked smile. Our mother. Rosemary Collier. "Where did you find this?" "I've been digging through old records. Adoption files. Foster care archives. I found a box of Mom's things that got put in storage after she died. No one ever claimed them." He swallowed. "There's more. A whole box of letters she wrote to us. Letters she never got to send. I've been reading them." My throat closed up. I couldn't speak. "She wrote one for you every year on your birthday," Jesse continued, his voice thick. "Every year, even after they told her you were gone. She never stopped writing. She never stopped hoping." He closed the locket around my neck, his hands trembling slightly. "I thought you should have a piece of her. Something to carry with you." I touched the locket, feeling the weight of it against my chest. The sun was setting over Cedar Creek, and the water was gold, and my brother was sitting next to me, and my mother was around my neck, and I was crying but I was also laughing, because life was so strange and so hard and so beautiful all at once. "Thank you," I whispered. "For this. For everything. You don't have to thank me. I'm your brother. This is what brothers do." I leaned my head against his shoulder, and we watched the sun go down, and I thought about all the years we'd lost, the birthdays, the holidays, the ordinary Sundays that other families took for granted. 30 years of separation. 30 years of not knowing. But we knew now. And the years ahead were ours. The next morning, I was driving to the dealership when I stopped at a red light and glanced over at the quick stop on the corner. The night shift guy was out front, hosing down the sidewalk. He was wearing a faded blue uniform and a name tag that was supposed to say Chet but clearly read Cheat. He looked tired. He looked defeated. He looked like a man who'd learned the hard way that karma wasn't just a concept, it was a force of nature, and it had a wicked sense of humor. The light turned green. I didn't honk. I didn't wave. I just drove past, my eyes on the road ahead, the locket warm against my skin. Some people wait their whole lives for revenge. They plot it, they plan it, they dream about it, and when it finally comes, it's never quite as sweet as they imagined. But me? I didn't wait for it. I didn't plan for it. I just lived my life, a good life, a happy life, a life full of family and laughter and purpose, and let the universe handle the rest. And the universe, bless its heart, handled it perfectly. The dealership is thriving. The lake house is full of Jessie's paintings. Mama Lou sends me awkward Christmas cards. Tiffany got her associate's degree and now manages the reception desk. Bobby Ray finally retired, but he still shows up every Friday with jalapeno cornbread. Darnell is my top salesman. Lupe runs the whole operation with an iron fist. And every Sunday, I drive out to the lake house, and my brother meets me there, and we sit on the dock and watch the sunset, and sometimes we talk about our mother, and sometimes we don't talk at all. They say living well is the best revenge. I think they're right. But I also think they're leaving out the best part. The best part isn't watching your enemies fall. It's realizing that you've stopped watching them at all. It's waking up one morning and discovering that your life is so full, so rich, so joyful, so complete, that you don't have room for bitterness anymore. Chet Dunwoody tried to leave me with nothing. Instead, he gave me everything. A brother. A home. A future. And a story so wild, so absurd, so perfectly satisfying that I get to tell it to anyone who'll listen. And you know what? People listen. They lean in close, and they listen, and when I get to the part about the gorilla in the wedding veil, or the wig in the Piggly Wiggly parking lot, or the mugshot at the quick stop, they laugh. They laugh until they cry, and then they shake their heads and say, "That can't be real." But it is real. Every word of it. Because this is Texas, honey. And in Texas, we don't just believe in justice. We believe in making it entertaining.